Yo, what's good? It's your man 100 Grand Ross with The Rock Never Stops. Tonight I want to do a video about the Boston Celtics and what are their next steps to try to become a championship team. There is a lot of discussion oftentimes when somebody loses or falls short of winning an NBA championship that many times individuals overreact. They look for wholesale changes. They look to add another significant piece. They oftentimes begin to second guess just how good they actually are. And in the case of the Boston Celtics, I've heard a bunch of people throw out free agents that they need to go after, key pieces, positions that they need to address. But the reality that I kind of see is that Boston is in a weird space where I'm not sure the piece that would put them over the top is actually out there. Like, what they're really needing is someone who elevates them to a degree that they become a firm championship favorite. And when I say someone who elevates them to a firm championship favorite, I mean someone who's an all-star, someone who has championship experience, someone who alleviates much of the burden of leading, scoring, playmaking, carrying the load that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum essentially had to carry by themselves. Now, I know that there were times and moments where guys stepped up, and that's totally great. It's wonderful. Grant Williams had his moments. Marcus Smart had his moments. Al Horford had his moments. Even Derek White. And yet when they got to a championship round, right, when they faced a team that was really, really a title favorite, I don't think anybody really thought Miami was. I think people saw them as a dark horse if things fell into place just right. But I don't think anybody saw them in that light. And yet, when Boston faced a true champion, you could tell that they were missing a significant piece. Not somebody who's a quality player or a good player, because don't get me wrong, Grant Williams is a good player. I think he's the next PJ Tucker with a little bit more facilitation ability. I love Al Horford. I think everybody loves Al Horford. A lot of people were rooting for him to finally get a championship after such a great career. I think everybody loves Robert Williams, Marcus Smart. Like I said, these guys all had moments. And yet, when you got to a championship level, that wasn't what they needed. That wasn't what was lacking. They didn't need simply a guy to come in who could hit shots. They needed somebody who could come in and demand the attention of a defense that made the game easier for Tatum and Brown. That's what this team needed. They needed somebody who could shift the energy, the flow, in a way that accentuated what these individuals did best without asking them to do more, right? You don't want to ask Al Horford and Marcus Smart to average 20 points a game. And yet that's what they were going to need in these NBA finals for them to have a chance to win. And so who is that guy out there? Like I said before, it's a weird place. I don't think that guy is out there for him. There are thoughts in my mind that, kind of drift towards guys like John Collins. But I don't think Atlanta's going to give him up. And what Boston would have to give up in order to get him, I don't think it's going to be worth it. But what I see is they could potentially piece together and solidify a bench that can at least give Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum a reprieve. And when I say a reprieve, I mean ensuring that these guys don't have to play 40 plus minutes a game in the finals, in the semifinals, in order to remain competitive. They need players that, and I would say at least two, players who when they come in, you can trust them to score, you can trust them to defend, you can trust them to play at a playoff championship level when they need it the most in the playoffs. And so I'm going to go through some free agents and some guys who should be available. And then we're going to have a little discussion around what the internal development is going to look like as well. Um, but a few guys that have come to mind are players such as Kyle Anderson, 6'9", versatile forward, 7'2" wingspan. They call him slow-mo, but really he's a very methodical, cerebral player. Great facilitator, playmaker, help defender, on-ball defender, great length in that San Antonio Spurs pedigree where he has a good IQ, understands how to play winning basketball. He's going to remind you a lot of Al Horford, to be honest. And it never hurts a team to have multiple players like that. Then there's other guys like TJ Warren, who I especially like, a 6'7", 6'8" forward who's a walking bucket when he's healthy and coming off the bench for a contender. Now that changes things. You ask him to be the number one scoring option or number two scoring option on a playoff team, that may not be what he is. And I'm not saying that he's not, because I actually like him a lot. I think he has that in him if he ever got the chance. But it's to say that you bring him into Boston and you have him come off the bench for 18 to 20 plus minutes a game. He's going to get you buckets. He's going to get you 10 to 20 points each game. He's going to be a six man of the year candidate type deal. And I know he's coming off a full season off, and I think a season and change, actually. He's been out for quite a bit. And yet his game has never been one that has required a lot of explosiveness in the first place. So any athleticism he may have lost due to his injuries, I don't think is really going to hamper his effectiveness. Some other guys to think about it, guys like Terrence Ross and Eric Gordon. I think both of those guys are playoff tested. They bring shooting, toughness, athleticism, some ball handling, slashing ability. These are guys that you can plug into a playoff team and trust that when they're out there, they know what to do. They're going to execute the offense. They're going to be in the right place on defense. And they're going to make plays for you. They're going to make plays that you can depend upon. And I think that a combination of those two, to get a guard, wing, and to get a forward who can come in off the bench and be what everybody had hoped Aaron Nesmith was going to be able to be what I think Grant Williams was asked a little bit too much of to be. I think that's going to give them a chance to say, hey, even if we can't get that game-changing all-star, we can have pieces that give us depth, that allow our starters to remain fresh, that allows them to play at their highest ability, which you saw throughout the back end of these playoffs in the Eastern Conference Finals and in the NBA Finals. Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, they were gassed. I think it was around Game 3 where they just stopped closing out. They would give the first effort, maybe the second to close out, and then that was it. That extra pass to the corner, nope. They weren't going. They were exhausted. And so can the Boston Celtics bring in a couple of guys who can spell them? Now, looking at internal growth, I don't think Marcus Smart is going to get too much better. I think he can shore up the turnovers. He's gotten better about techs and things like that. I think he can continue to improve as a shooter and become more efficient. But I don't think he's ever going to be your floor general, the guy who's setting up the offense to make it easier on your main two players. Right? Honestly, I think that's going to be Derek White. I think Derek White is going to be that guy because he's also somebody that I think is not going to mind playing 18 to 20 minutes a game as a starter. Remember, he's in that San Antonio Spurs championship pedigree. He understands winning basketball. That's what they do in San Antonio. And you saw it immediately. He was able to plug in, but he was never quite exactly everything you wanted him to be. But I think as a starter, one thing he will bring is in his facilitation ability, making the offense flow a little bit better while not giving up anything defensively. I think he could do a Tyus Jones type of job in the playoffs as a starter. and then bringing in a Marcus Smart to play the 1 and the 2 position, right? I think that can be an excellent combination because both of them are 6'4". Both of them have really good athleticism for the NBA, have good length, and can really get after it. And so just that switch alone, I think is going to make a big difference. But I also see guys like Grant Williams building off of his success in the playoffs. Look, don't get it twisted. Just because he struggled against the Golden State Warriors, just because he struggled in the NBA Finals like many players do, he had moments. And throughout the playoffs, from the first round to semifinals to the conference finals, he had some great stretches, and I mean great stretches, shooting the ball at a high clip efficiently, ridiculous efficiency, rebounding, tough defense. I told you before, in that PJ Tucker mold, which every team is kind of looking for, that really tough physical forward that can really take it to small ball lineups and not give up a lot. And even though he got exposed a little bit against the Warriors, he's not going to get exposed night in and night out versus most teams. And so I think Grant Williams is going to be able to take a step forward, being more confident in his offensive game, being able to have a more expanded role. I expect him to play at a higher level next season. Now, of course, you got guys like Robert Williams just getting healthy alone. Oh, my goodness. That's going to help them out in an incredible way. And Al Horford having another year under Ime Udoka, another training camp, another off season. Even though he's getting older, I think the presence of Grant Williams stepping up, Robert Williams stepping up, is going to alleviate a lot of the burden that he normally carries, being the main player in the front court for a playoff team. And I think he's going to be able to have more of a reserve role where they're going to be able to save him for the playoffs. And so I think that that's going to be a big adjustment. That's going to be a big addition just by having greater depth. And then, of course, you got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown, when I watched him play, I felt like he was the more effective player between him and Tatum. And I say effective because he didn't necessarily need to do a lot of dribbling to get himself into a rhythm to get into his shot. He didn't need to do a lot of dribbling to get into a rhythm in order to take somebody off the dribble. And though at times he kind of stumbled and his forays to the basket feel a little awkward at times and his handle isn't necessarily as aesthetically pleasing as a Jason Tatum, he was far more effective. His ability to go off the bounce, off one dribble or two dribbles straight to the rim, his slashing ability and his mid-range scoring was far more impactful and consistent and reliable than Jason Tatum's was. Like, we all love Jason Tatum's game. We think he's a special player, a special scorer. But he struggled when defenses got up into him and didn't allow him to get into a rhythm. And the help defense was in place. I mean, this is what happens in the playoffs, especially when you're looking at trying to get into the championship round. You're going to be facing not good defenses. You're going to be facing great defenses because that's what it takes to get there. Great defense. And right now, Tatum struggles against great defense. He has struggled against great defense. And I mean incredibly good defense. But where he is going to grow is I think he's going to take a page. I think both of them, Tatum and Brown, are going to be able to take a page out of each other's book. Brown is going to be able to look at Tatum and say, hey, you know what? Let me improve my ball handling a little bit. My ability to finish with touch, even though he finished really well throughout the playoffs. And ironically, Tatum struggled. But he's going to be able to take some of the ways in which he was able to use English and using different angles off the backboard. I think Jaylen Brown is going to be able to improve in those areas and refine his skill that much more, right? Remember, this is really the first and second season of being able to be this 20-point-a-game scorer, playoff scorer that his team is able to rely upon. And so I think he's going to take even more of a jump next year as he refines those little nuances of his ball handling and ability to get to his spots. And likewise, I think Jason Tatum is going to be able to learn from Jaylen Brown that you got to be able to go off that first bounce. You've got to be able to jab, cross, jab, go, jab, step back, and simplify your game a bit. Not to mention, you've got to be able to get to your shot. You see, that is what really separates guys who can be the best player on a championship team, is that there is nobody who can keep them from getting to their spots. Guys can make it tough. They can make it difficult. But nobody is keeping a number one scorer for a championship team from getting to their spots. What we saw in these playoffs is you can keep Jason Tatum from getting to his spots. You can make it so hard for him to get to his spots. He's actually I'm not going to say he's going to stop shooting. I mean, that wasn't until the NBA Finals that he stopped doing that. But he had so many struggles from the Milwaukee series into the Miami series, which was a brutal series for him. Grinded out series going to the NBA Finals with Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. Like, he was able to be stopped from getting to his spots. And that's a concern. And so that's something I definitely feel like he's going to shore up. Where he's going to be able to simplify his game to say, hey, how do I get to my spot off of just one dribble? How do I get to my spot before I even catch the ball? To where as soon as I catch it, they got to bring the double team. And then I can play make from there. So these are things that I think are going to improve in Ime Udoka as well going into year two. Remember, he's a rookie head coach in the NBA Finals, right? He's got plenty of experience, but it's different being that guy in that position at this stage. And that's something you can only really learn from being there. And so I fully expect this team to kind of jostle around minutes, who's starting, and then adding 1 to 2 players. They got a $17 million trade exemption, which is definitely going to help. They can go out and they can get a Terrence Ross. They can go out and they can get an Eric Gordon, right, if they need to. And then they can try to sign a versatile forward. You know, the Jeff Green sort, the Marcus Morris sort, the Kyle Anderson sort that I brought up before, right? I think this is where you're going to see the Boston Celtics going in this next stage, because now there's a different level of expectation. You've been there. You've been there. You have tasted what it feels like to be there, and it's a sour taste in your mouth. We're expecting the Boston Celtics to be hungry next year. But as we saw with the Phoenix Suns, nothing is guaranteed. Everybody's going to continue to get better. So it's not enough that you get just good enough to get back. You need to be good enough to overcome a healthy Cleveland Cavaliers who had their own span at the top of the Eastern Conference, a healthy Chicago Bulls who had their own moments, and a developing Patrick Williams, right? Nikola Vucevic with another year, DeMar DeRozan with another year, Zach LaVine healthy with another year, right? Lonzo, all these brand new pieces now having more continuity, having more understanding of what is expected from them within Billy Donovan's system. You're still going to have the Milwaukee Bucks coming back. God forbid if they get somebody like Eric Gordon or Terrence Ross behind Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? Philly, as they figure out Tyrese Maxey needs to be the number 2 option, right? Philly's going to be back. Brooklyn is going to be back, and they're going to be, angry. They're going to be angry. Kevin Durant, remember, they were at the top of the East, and we saw the East as a deeper conference last year or this past season, right? All those teams are coming back. All those teams are forecasted to be better. I mean, you had Ben Simmons. I've already gone into that in other videos. So the Boston Celtics, whatever moves that they make, they have to be significant. What they can't do is not do anything. And I don't think they will. Brad Stevens was very clear in his interviews, in his exit interviews, that they were going to be extremely aggressive and active in this offseason, as they should. And even though the biggest adjustments or the biggest moves is going to be what Tatum and Brown do, and the switching probably of Derek White and Marcus Smart in terms of starting and coming off the bench, who they bring in to keep their starters fresh, who they bring in to keep Tatum and Brown fresh throughout the season is going to be of the utmost importance for this franchise. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you think they need to bring in one piece, two pieces? Who do you think it is that they need to bring in? What do you think of the current roster makeup? Do you think certain guys need to be let go or traded? Or do they stand pat and build upon what they've accomplished this past season going into next year? Yo, that's the end of the video. You know what to do. Smash the like button. Hit subscribe, the bell for notifications. I appreciate all the support, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.